I think that was one of them. Not only that, I mean, good thing that I had. I feel like I had that experience young for a purpose because my sister was 47 and she got the same disease. It's called leukoencephalopathy. It's a
Mm-hmm.
leukodystrophy, vanishing white matter of the brain. And
Mm-hmm.
my sister got it, and she had been out of work. She works for Head Start. She's a teacher, and she was then working family care, family advocate. Anyway, she had been out of work 6 months and going to the doctor, and they were telling her that she might have Parkinson's or
Mm-hmm.
um, I forgot what the other thing was, but they hadn't done any tests. And when I found out, I happened to be precinct walking because I love precinct walking. So I
Mm-hmm.
always do my hometown because I know the neighbors, or this way I keep up with who's still there, who's not, and
Right.
their children are now in the home or whatever. And they will usually wait for me. Oh, estaba esperando para que me digas de este bill. They want to know.
Yeah.
And they trust me. I have the trust of my community. Like I said, I was gone for many years because of my organizing, but I always
Mm-hmm.
came back for family, engagements and things like that. And so I always have stayed in touch with my community. And
Right.
and my family is big there, and I have a large family in town. So they're compadres, the neighbors and so forth. So, anyways, my sister had told me that one of our younger sister was sick and had been out of work for 6 months. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with her? And that's what she told me. Well, they said she might have Parkinson's or she might have, I don't know what. And so right away I went over and I said, what's going on? And she was off, she said, off on stress or something because she thought she was getting headaches and she felt unbalanced and dizzy and stuff. And I said, well, I asked her what the doctor told her, and she told me. I said, well, what tests have they done? And she said none. And I'm like, what? And she said she was going to a specialist. So I got my mother's autopsy. And then I had her make an appointment with the doctor, and I went with her. And I told her, how can you tell my sister, that she has this illness when you haven't done any tests? What tests
Mhm.
have you done to be able to diagnose this? And then she said, oh, I haven't because they're very expensive. And that was the wrong thing to
Well,
say. And I said,
yeah.
what? What? I said, my sister's a professional and she has health care, and her husband is a correctional officer and he has health care. So she has 100% crossover. I said, this disease that she could have is I said, is very aggressive and you could be
Mhm.
liable. When I said
Yeah.
that, she got all, and I told her, if it's beyond your scope, why haven't you sent her somewhere? And I said, there's no such thing as a test are too expensive. That's what they're there for. Because she
Yeah.
hadn't done a CT scan or brain scan or anything. So then, and I showed her my mother's autopsy, and it said that it could be genetic and hereditary, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then we ended up going to Stanford, but by at that time it took like 4 months to get the results back. But so during that time, it was an election year and I was running the Central Labor Council. But every night I would stay up late and do research, and I would listen to doctors giving lectures, about breakthroughs and so forth. So I found out about clinical bone marrow transplants. So
Mm-hmm.
when the doctor came back, um, when she came back with the results the day that we went to Stanford, she let us know that it was confirmed that my sister had the same thing my mother had, and she could have died within 5 years. She's already 7 years and
Well,
living
yeah.
successfully, and so then she's thriving. So then when the doctor came, she let us cry and hug or whatever. Then she came back in and I said, okay, I said, so now plan B. I said, I hear that there's clinical bone marrow transplants. Where do they do them, or where do we have to go? We'll do anything to save our sister's life. And then she
Mhm.
told me that at that time they were only doing it in Minnesota and then someplace else that was really far. And I said, that's okay. So she went back and got the information and said, you call on your end and then I'll call on my end. And I said, okay. So we ended up going there. And the good thing is for an evaluation is that my sister was still young and she was still healthy. Like, the disease had not advanced yet, to such a state. So, but just within those 4 months that we had waited for the test to come back, she went from walking unbalanced to being in a wheelchair.
Well,
And
that's amazing.
so what you lose, you can never get back.
Yeah.
But her brain is still there, and she can still talk and use her hands because our mother just didn't have any capacity to use any of those facilities. She was just on an NG tube and in the bed basically. So, anyways, we went and they said she was a great candidate. She was only the third one, and the second candidate didn't make it. We know because later we've gone to two conferences on this illness, and there's a group called Sisters Hope, and there are three sisters, and two of the sisters have had this illness and other people in the family. So they started this nonprofit. And so we've gone to Irvine for these conferences. And so one of our sisters was the bone marrow donor. And like I said, so she had the bone marrow transplant, and she's been 7 years and she's thriving. The only thing is she's in the wheelchair, but there's a lot of people in a wheelchair, you know. So it can't cure the disease, but it'll stop it from progressing. You know, it slows it down from progressing. And so yeah, I think that having been in that situation of not having health care and knowing that there's other families like that their family die without any hope because they don't have health care and they don't have the financial means to pay for what they
Right.
for health care.